Welcome to Search Talk Live with search engine optimization and marketing experts Robert O'Haver and Matt Weber. Powered by the Robert Palmer family of companies.
All right, welcome back to Search Talk Live. I am your host, and you know who I am, so I'm not going to say my name, Robert O'Haver.
Hey, Robert O'Haver, how you doing?
And with me is Matt Weber of Roar Internet Marketing.
Hey, Robert, how's it going? That was a great studio audience we had. That's a pretty active little applause there we got.
Yeah. So why don't you tell people about yourself real quick?
Yeah, I am the CEO of Roar Internet Marketing, and we're a digital marketing agency just outside of Orlando. I'm also the inventor and founder of Smilealytics, a new analytics tool that translates your Google Analytics data into photographs. And a lot of people get to meet me by traveling across the country when I work for Google in the Grow with Google program, and I teach Google Ads, local search, and other Google products to folks all across the country on behalf of Google.
Awesome. And you have also an advantage. Your wife is part of the company as well.
She is, and she's got her own expertise. She is really into local search, and she drives our local search success, which, as you know, there's so much happening in local search lately.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, that just gives it more passion. You guys are like the A-team.
Yeah.
So anyway, today, guys, we're going to switch it up a little bit. We're going to talk some enterprise stuff, and some of this, and I'll let you know, to grab your pen, paper, take notes, because some of this is going to be, more advanced than it is the beginner level. So make sure you take some notes, or at least come back and listen to the show over until you get, what we're saying. But you can also send us a tweet on Twitter. You can go to hashtag SearchTalkLive and ask your question live while we're on the show right now. We can ask our guest, or maybe one of us can answer it. But you can also send us an email, robert@searchtalklive.com or matt@searchtalklive.com. It's pretty simple. And if you're interested in being a guest on the show, you can also hit me up on an email. All right, let's get to the show. Today our guest is an enterprise-level SEO. He's been in the business for quite some time. And we're going to be talking enterprise SEO, how to create an experiment framework. Today our guest is Tom Griffith. He's the founder of ClickMinded. Tommy, how's it going?
Robert, Matt, what's going on? Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Do you go by Tom or Tommy?
You can go for Tommy.
Okay.
Actually, I get made fun of for that all the time. I got into an Uber the other day, and the guy was like, I'm 33 years old, and the guy was like, hey, man, how long are you going to keep doing this Tommy thing? I was like, what? Come on. It's my thing, man. That's my angle. Leave me alone. Awesome. You know what I mean? So whatever.
And that was a pre-tip question from your Uber driver?
It's a risky move by him, man. I mean, come on.
It's a good way to break the ice.
Yeah. But I'm also interested in Tommy today because Tommy's also a trainer. In SEO, so he's got a great perspective to bring to the show. Enterprise level SEO, got a great resume, worked for Airbnb, but he's now doing some training, so he has a unique ability to break some of these concepts down into bits and pieces that people can digest.
Yeah, and the other thing is he's sitting in Honolulu, Hawaii right now.
Oh, man.
Tough life.
True.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
Very tough. I'm going to lie to you and tell you it's a terrible day here today.
It's cloudy and rainy, right?
That's right. Super gross.
No volcano action?
Not paradise. It is not paradise.
But you're kind of sucking it up because you're there in a 200 square foot apartment with no view of the outside world, right?
That's right. It's a box. I'm very unhappy right now. That's right. Whatever helps you sleep at night.
All right. Well, let's. Why don't you tell us about yourself? A little bit about your background, and Matt had mentioned you do some training as well. Why don't you give our listeners the 50-foot level view of yourself?
Yeah, sure. So my story started like a lot of nerdy internet marketers by reading the 4-Hour Workweek, Tim Ferriss's book. You guys familiar with that book?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that was the catalyst for a lot of people that got interested in remote businesses and internet marketing and that kind of stuff. I got really into search engine optimization a long time ago. I wrote a very dorky ebook as my first business and tried to get it ranking in Google. That was sort of how I started to figure it out. What I didn't realize at the time, I mean, this was 2008, and I was optimizing a site prior to the exact match domain update, right? So I picked my primary keyword. I ended up getting that keyword in the domain. I got like one backlink and it was ranking 2 within a week, right? And I'm sitting there like, I am a genius. Like, I am the smartest man to ever live, right? And
those were the days.
those were the days, exactly. Ended up doing a business with a friend of mine that failed miserably. We started a kind of an internet marketing type business a long time ago, and I was one of these guys who was very blessed. I graduated university with no debt. Parents paid for college, but I ended up putting myself into debt after university, trying to start this business with a friend of mine. It failed, ran out of money, came home with my tail between my legs, and back on mom and dad's couch. But I was pretty miserable, but I had, accidentally learned SEO and SEM like over the last year and a half, and it ended up just being the right place, right time. PayPal was hiring an SEO manager for emerging markets, and I ended up moving out to the Bay Area, and that started my career out there. I did 2 years managing search engine optimization at PayPal, 4 years managing search engine optimization at Airbnb, and during that time, one of the sort of motivations I had was to pay off all this debt I had created for myself with the first idea. I started an offline SEO training course called ClickMinded. So I would, go out to a co-working space on weekends in San Francisco and physically teach in-person SEO classes. Entrepreneurs, startups, marketers would come in, and it would be kind of like a all-you-can SEO, nerding out on stuff, kind of like 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. On Saturday mornings, and that ended up turning into an online course. Udemy, it was just taking off at the time. This was probably like 2012. Put the course online and ended up working on it while managing SEO at Airbnb. So any of the data scientists or engineers or designers that joined my team, the SEO team, part of the growth team at Airbnb, they would take the course, right? Mm-hmm. 2 years ago, I left Airbnb to go full-time on the course, and now we've expanded to 7 different courses, and we teach kind of all types of digital marketing. And our angle is we teach entrepreneurs, in-house marketers, and consultants or agencies how to do digital marketing across a number of different topics. And a lot of people use us for training up new staff, training up people who are specialists in one thing but not in another, that kind of stuff.
So you transitioned your training from in-person instructor-led training to everything's online now?
That's right. Yep.
Wow, that makes it
much more cost efficient, and much more scalable.
Yeah, for sure.
I would say.
That was an interesting. It was a really interesting time because I really loved I loved in-person training. I also taught a digital marketing elective at a grad school in San Francisco, and I love the in-person training stuff. But the actual business was terrible. I mean, it was just like very hard to make it work, very time intensive. Even though I enjoyed it a lot, it was very tough to make it all work. So yeah, we went online in about 2012 and haven't looked back since.
I think one of the things that helped you and propelled your career is there's nothing that makes you make sure you know your stuff than standing in front of an audience of people and you have to answer questions.
Yeah,
it's very true. Yeah. And I think one of the accidental, I had no idea this was the case at the time, but looking back, one of the accidental sort of things I did right, I did a lot of things wrong, but one of the things I accidentally did right was exactly what you just said. A lot of the other people that were creating online courses, internet marketers don't like to leave their basement. You know what I mean? And I'm guilty of this too, but a lot of the other courses that were out there, there were people who, they were talking into their laptop, talking over slides, and like talking into their computer while going through Excel docs. And the only way you get feedback when you do that is once you push it live and you get those 1-star reviews, right? But the inverse is like if you start offline, you see it in people's faces. You know when you suck, or you know when you're great, or you know when that joke lands or that metaphor connects, or like whatever it is. And so I had this weird advantage where I taught offline, for the first portion of the business, and then by the time I had put it online, the V1 of the online product was pretty far along when we first went live. So it ended up being a big advantage.
Cool. Robert, are you an Airbnb consumer?
I have used it.
Yeah. They have some really fascinating search challenges. Would you agree? I mean, the range of things they got to rank for is amazing.
Yeah, and then you're up against hotels and everything else.
Big boys.
Google.
Right, exactly. Tommy, what if you can share it? What are some of the secrets that Airbnb did and maybe does to rank for that huge volume of potential queries that are just absolutely critical to the business?
Yeah, this is awesome that your intuition has picked this up, because I've chatted about this a lot with other people, and they don't understand the scope of the problem for someone like Airbnb. But you're right, it is massive. So the one thing to think about with enterprise SEO is the nature of the problem and the nature of the business, right? So for example, at PayPal, there's a very finite universe of keywords you could conceivably rank for, right? Send money online, payment processing, accept credit cards, and then different language variations. There's kind of a fixed set, right? And the difference with Airbnb is it's optimizing a web application for a near infinite series of variables and languages, right? Wow. So the way to think about this, and this is funny too, because the first thing people say is they say, maybe they've seen some content marketing from Airbnb, or they've seen the really high quality photography or some of the cool sort of buzz marketing, brand marketing stuff that we've done, and they say, oh, how do you guys do content marketing at Airbnb? But the big dirty secret is actually the vast majority of content marketing has nothing to do with SEO. We don't really do, and again, I haven't been there for 2 years. Things that may have changed a little bit. I'm still in touch with everyone there, but I don't know what's going on day to day. But the vast majority of what we did is not really related to content marketing. It's an engineering challenge around making the actual web application more SEO friendly, right? So just to give you some examples. Okay, so an easy one is Miami vacation rentals, right? That's a very easy one. But then there's different variations as well, right? There's apartments and bed and breakfasts and condos and things like that, right? And then there's additional variables on top of that, right? There's pet-friendly vacation rentals and family-friendly bed and breakfasts, right? And apartments with a hot tub, right? And then there's geographic location. So I'd mentioned a city, but you can also do, Bay Area apartment rentals, or you can do Lake Tahoe rentals, right? And you have to use we were using the Google Geocoder API to render different results based on different searches. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, there's languages. I mean, we manage 20 different languages across 55 different top level domains, right? So, there's a Hungarian searching from France for a Miami vacation rental, and there's a Spanish person in Germany searching in Czech for a villa in Italy, right? And so we have all of these different conceivable variations. So our at PayPal, the total potential universe of keywords is probably in the 50 to 100 pages mark. And at Airbnb, it was somewhere between the 10 and 50 million.
10 and 50 million.
As total conceivable, theoretical number of pages we could be optimizing for. We weren't actually going for that many, but that was sort of the pool to play in. So on top of that, and the big challenge around all of that is it's a web application that has to do a lot of things, right? Airbnb is kind of world-renowned for being really, really focused on design, right? 2 of the 3 co-founders are designers. Airbnb was one of the first companies to really emphasize high-quality photography, and user experience is just first, second, and third place when it comes to everything, right? So there were just a number of times where we would say, here's the change we want to make. Here's the impact we think it'll have. Here's why we think it's good for search. And, I'd sit down with growth executives or people way above my pay grade, people way smarter than me, and they would say, no, it's not worth the trade-off, right? So this is extremely frustrating as an SEO in the beginning, right? Because, of course, a lot of SEOs do this, and I was guilty of it as well. What's that saying? To a carpenter, every problem is a nail, or to a hammer, every problem is a nail, right? For me, everything could be solved with SEO, right? That was sort of my angle. Mm-hmm. And when we would do, total addressable market sizing and hypothesize the impact of a change and present it to people, there was just a number of times where design won out. And TripAdvisor, some of our other competitors would run away with a certain segment. And when I was in the weeds, it was very frustrating. But looking back, there were just a number of times where they were right, where the kind of people above my pay grade, they looked at the trade-off, they looked at the potential impact to user experience, and they would say, no, we're not doing this yet. And so that became a really sort of, the big dirty secret about enterprise SEO is that it's actually extremely boring. Like there's
let's unpack a couple things here. That's a massive amount of search queries. I mean, mind-boggling to me, for sure. But is all of that the result of your ranking? Is it all a result of the dynamically generated content in the directory-based application? Or at some point did you say, listen, we got to have some static content to be able to rank for this term? Or was it all the dynamic content?
Yeah, it's a good question. We tried. We thought about it a lot, and there were a couple of attempts over my 4 years there to make some type of content. Just the reality is, it doesn't make enough of a dent, right? And if we did do it, it was just a little bit too top of funnel for us. I mean, the way bigger opportunity is people much closer to booking accommodation and the different variations that they had, right? So, yes, we tried sort of both angles, and what ended up being the highest impact stuff was, the dynamically generated stuff. Now there's ways we can go about doing that. So, for example, every host that lists their accommodation, they generate a ton of content. They describe the accommodation, they describe the neighborhood, and we would basically use a lot of that user-generated content. Not very different from kind of how Yelp or Pinterest would do it, right? It's very, very similar sort of style where you're taking user-generated content, you're sort of mapping it to search query expectations, and you're trying to find a reasonable way to get that dynamically generated page indexed and optimized for Google and other search engines.
And Tommy, how cross-pollinated were they? When I say that, what I mean is, are you SEOs talking to the paid people to see maybe, hey, these 10 keywords are money. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. We the team changed a lot while I was there, but we were super tight with paid. Obviously, that was kind of our online marketing was all working together, sure. And we use paid data often. Airbnb is actually very, very strong at paid, and I think a lot of the reason why was one of the co-founders was very interested in it in the early days and wrote a bunch of tools to help us use it and things like that.
Yeah.
And so we were using paid data often.
Nice.
So what happens if you've got a city like, Pudunk, Illinois? You kind of want to rank for it, but you really don't have a lot of listings in Pudunk, Illinois. You don't have that dynamically generated content. What do you do?
Yeah, we would no index it. I mean, if we didn't have the content, we would simply not go for that keyword. So we always had to be search volume for the city and accommodation type sort of variables, and we had to have enough user-generated content for it. And if we didn't, then it would be left alone.
Can you illustrate one of those situations that you were describing where the design team had to give some input on a change you wanted to make to improve the SEO, and the design team took a look at it and said, hey, that's going to negatively impact either our conversion rate or our time on site, and when we balance it, we're going to reject it. Can you maybe illuminate one specific situation? What was an issue that came into play?
Yeah, it would probably be 90% of all of my meetings for 4 years. So.
But Tommy, you've been in the business long enough. You know that designers, SEOs, and developers all kind of clash from all sides. Not every time, but most of the a lot of the time.
My food and drinks were poisoned for 4 years, and I think it was the designers. They were trying to kill me every chance they could get. It was basically my job to ruin designers' lives at Airbnb, and it was basically their job to ruin mine. So some examples would be like, okay, so just stepping back a bit, like one of the biggest optimizations we had was technical optimization, right? We had 55 top-level domains, a number of different subdomains on top of that. I mean, we were in the 10 million plus Googlebot requests per day kind of zone, right? Wow. 5 to 10 million Googlebot requests a day, and so. Internal linking is not trivial at all in that situation, right? When you're getting that many Googlebot requests, you really can move the crawler around to where it needs to go. So, in generating the most popular locations based on a data set we had sort of underneath the site and rendering them on the page was an example of that, right? Really, really good for search engines, and I would say neutral to slightly good from a user experience perspective, and would have to sit down with designers and engineers and say, this is going to be neutral to slightly good for users and extremely good for search engines. Here's the case for it. Here's why we want to do it. And in that situation, we would get that one through, right? Mm-hmm. But there'd be other situations where we'd say, okay, it makes a lot of sense for us to, do like a quick info box, like a mouse over box that has a little bit of content about the listing that's crawlable for search engines. And if you're completely in the realm of just user experience and, you're watching users interact with the site, designers and other product managers would say, I don't understand what the user's getting from this. We're not going to do it, right? And it would just be like many, many, many different meetings and iterations and testing of different things before finally getting them to commit. So yeah, text on the page, that's really good for search engines. Internal linking, these kinds of things were often a battle for us.
Can you talk a little bit about the role of the funnel and how that affected your strategy on an enterprise level? Yeah,
so when you do enterprise SEO and you're kind of a specialist, one of the interesting things about it is that you don't, and this is very selfish and navel-gazy and just like in my own zone, but you don't have to always think about the entire funnel. And this is a blessing and a curse, right? It's kind of like some of the growth executives' job to worry about everything, and it was just sort of my job to hammer this one thing to get traffic onto the site, right? And there were other members of the growth team that were focusing on different aspects. So, and I remember this happened very early in the early days. The growth team kind of rallied around just a handful of metrics. We had all the TVs and dashboards and things up and monitoring all kinds of different metrics. And we ended up cutting the number of metrics we were sort of optimizing for to just a couple. And specifically, very specifically, like the SEO team ended up just focusing on incremental non-brand visits and first-time nights. And then that was the rest of the growth team as well. Everyone was just sort of focusing on first-time nights. So a user comes in and they sign up for an account for the first time and they book their first trip. And then we had all these other metrics around word of mouth virality. In general, this was in the earlier days, that's probably grown since, but in general, every Airbnb user ends up referring 2 friends within the first year of booking their first time night. And so this is just that's the dream, right? That is the dream. So all you really need to do is just hammer the first time nights. And it took off, and surprise, surprise, Airbnb doubled every year for 4 years in a row when I was there.
Nice. Huge. Well, let's broaden the conversation out a little bit. Let's talk more about some basic SEO principles. I got to ask this, as deep as you've been into SEO, because I know Robert's answer to this question. I'm pretty sure I can bet $50 I'll get it right. But if someone came to you, Tommy, and said, hey, you have to give up every single one of your SEO tools that you use, and you only get to keep one, what are you keeping?
Wow.
Ooh. I mean, now personally?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I mean, if it's today, these days, it's got to be Ahrefs. That's my go-to.
Boom. And they're a sponsor. Good answer.
And I knew that was your answer, too. Yeah.
Checks in the mail, right?
Why that one? And I'm going to just assume from your level of experience, you've touched them all.
Yep. Touched them all. Yep.
And so tell me, what do you get out of that tool that's mission critical?
I mean, it's the go-to. It's the Swiss Army knife now. Best link index, decent rank tracker, great for research. Has the built-in mention monitoring. If you just had to go one, it's the 80-20 of everything. I have other recommendations based on sort of where you are. Like we have a different recommendation for beginners doing keyword research and other things like that. But if you got to go one, gun to your head, it's Ahrefs, if you ask me.
Nice.
Yeah, I would agree. Now, you're also known, by the way, for having a popular checklist, and I know it's a part of how you market some of your trainings. What's the one thing on your checklist that you offer that you think is most misunderstood or most often missed by SEOs?
Interesting. Yeah, a lot of our SEO checklist is a little bit more of the basics, like, hey, I have no idea what SEO is. I have my site up. Like, it's basically the make sure you don't have a no index tag on your site kind of checklist sort of thing. But I would say one of the most misunderstood concepts is around content, and more specifically, having too much content, too many weak pages. I think Brian Dean has been great about this. He's been hammering kind of the sort of power page concept, like a smaller number of way higher quality, way higher authority pages.
Yeah.
And so, one of the big dirty secrets I like to do if you're a consultant or an agency and you're taking on a new client is to kill stuff. Going into GA or Google Search Console and looking at all the pages and trying to map out all the things that have topic overlap, and kill pages, right? Kill pages, reduce internal links, point them to a smaller number of higher quality pages, and just focusing on kind of those power pages that are super high authority. A lot of people, when they try and dig themselves out of an SEO rut by hammering out 500 new blog posts, and the reality is they should probably just focus on creating one monster one instead.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in getting rid of that access content that really not even getting any traffic. But I've also seen a situation where I had a really, in the last few clients that I've had a good experience where the client had an article but really doesn't pertain to the business, and it was getting a ton of traffic, and I ended up killing the page. But it almost flipped, and it was like Google said, "Wow, okay, now they're more relevant."
Interesting.
Yeah, really? So you got a benefit out of knocking out these pages that they wrote an article about something that was tangential to their business.
Right, and I killed the page. I didn't 301 redirect or anything like that. It's just I can't explain it. But it worked.
That's really interesting.
Sometimes less is more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. On your training, too, you talk about that you teach people the 8 critical on-page elements that you have to know. And I was going over it in my mind, Robert, and I was going, I think I can get to 7 if I can list 8 on-page elements. Now, that's depending on whether you're including heads and subheads as different ones. But in your mind, can you list 8 critical on-page elements right now?
Yeah.
You can list 8.
Oh, more than that, probably.
All right, Tommy, take us through the 8.
8 critical on-page elements. I'm curious where you're seeing this on the site, because I don't know if that's something we push now these days. This all sounds new to me.
I've read your stuff closer than you have.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, this one's new to me.
But it was a great exercise when I was preparing for the show, and you go right down title, URL, description, alt tag, copy, head, subhead,
content.
You're at 7. I got content already, so you're at 7.
Mm-hmm.
What's the 8th?
It's the 8th wonder of the world. Speed.
Yeah, I mean.
Internal links. Internal links could have been the 8th.
Yep, internal links.
Internal links would be the 8th.
So if you want to go deeper on images as well, you could, but slightly less critical these days.
All right, so there's your magic 8.
There you go.
Yeah, and this whole algorithm update thing for the last 3 to 4 years, where everything's been kind of like all over the place, and it's I'd say in the last year it's kind of smoothing out now, but we lost a lot of SEOs, or self-proclaimed SEOs.
Because they were just giving up, you think?
Yeah, they just didn't understand. I think, to me, it's not that it's easier, but it's really more defined. If you have experience in the industry, like Tommy or me, or it's more surgical than it is. Well, what about this, or what about that? What about this? You know
Is
what I'm saying?
SEO more predictable today than it was 2 years ago?
I would say yes. Tommy, what would you say?
Interesting. More predictable. I don't know. I think I do like that it's becoming more accepted. It's not as black hattish as it used to be sort of 10 years ago. Or at least the the PR around it, right? Like, I feel like in 2008 when I was getting started, people swapped between like online poker and SEO, right? And like now it's becoming, a much more legitimate profession. And I really like that there's specialization within it. There's people who just do technical SEO or just do internationalization, right? So that to me is pretty interesting. And I think, you'd mentioned at the top of the hour, you're working on a lot of local SEO, right? I really like that people are honing in on developing an expertise across all these verticals. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it's also important to be well diverse in whether it be technical or just, basic SEO. But I think you really need to have that skill set, HTML, obviously, WordPress, those things. You really need to have all of that.
Absolutely. Yep, for sure.
Maybe one of the reasons SEO appears less predictable is that as the internet has evolved, more and more websites are properly optimized. I think Google's done a great job of saying what we really want to do is get people the answers that they're looking for. Right? So back 3 years ago, if you were competing for a particular keyword, in that top 6, there were probably 3 people that, in quotes, got it as far as SEO and 3 people that didn't get it. So you could see wide swings in the rankings because of who's in that competition. Mm-hmm. And now maybe 5 of those websites in that same keyword ranking kind of get it, in quotes, and now only one of them maybe doesn't get it. So you don't see that swing, that big vacillation in ranking that maybe you did when you would make a change, because that was largely the result of what other people weren't doing in correlation with what you were doing.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense, yeah.
Definitely. All right, guys. Well, we have to take a break. Now, before we take our break, I want to explain to you what we're going to do when we get back. We have a segment called Who Influences the Influencer? So we want to know, a list of maybe 5-10 people that you follow on social media or in the industry that really kind of gives you your navigation or whatever through the industry. All right? Right after these messages.
Today's episode of Search Talk Live is sponsored by...
Hey, Robert, you're here early for the show.
Yeah, I got a ton of SEO work done this morning, and I got it done way ahead of schedule. Couldn't have done it without Ahrefs.
Yeah, so much easier than using multiple programs and having data in a bunch of different places.
Plus, being able to see what is holding a page back from ranking in Ahrefs is so much faster than picking through each part myself.
Oh, yeah, I agree. We use Ahrefs because it's so easy to teach people at our agency how to use it. Their YouTube tutorials couldn't be better. It's one thing to have a tool. It's another thing to know your team is using it to its full capacity. I don't think there's an easier, more complete tool than Ahrefs. Hey, Robert, why don't you hit them up to be a sponsor of the show?
I am way ahead of you.
Ahrefs, the official SEO tool of Search Talk Live. Try their new 7-day trial for only $7. Go to Ahrefs.com. That's Ahrefs.com.
Your website analytics data probably feels like this. But it could feel like this. Making sense of all the website data available to you hasn't been easy until now. Smialytics transforms your website analytics data into easy-to-understand, memorable photographs. You pick your own photo theme. Smialytics. S-M-Y-L-E lytics. Like analytics. Only happier. And it's free at smialytics.com. Want to know how your website is doing? Get the big picture with pictures. It's the easiest and most enjoyable way to understand your website data. No charts, no graphs, no cost. Sign up today. Smialytics. S-M-Y-L-E lytics. Like analytics. Only happier at smialytics.com.
Get your questions in on Twitter. Type hashtag SearchTalkLive and your question. Now back to the show.
All right, Tommy, we are back, and we have really enjoyed you being on the show so far. But now we're going to put you kind of on the spot here. We want to know who influences you, the influencer.
Yeah, so there's a lot of good SEO and digital marketing nerds that I like to follow. A couple of them, I was just thinking through it when you'd asked me that. I think the big one, I really like Glenn Alsop, Viper Chill. Do you guys know him?
I don't.
No.
Yeah, he's great. Gaps.com or Detailed.com are his two blogs. He's incredible. He's been in the game for a long time. Really, really good person to follow. Nat Eliason, you familiar with him? His agency is called Growth Machine, but he worked with the AppSumo or Sumo guys for a while.
Yep.
Another really good SEO and growth marketer. Louis Grenier, he has a podcast called Everyone Hates Marketers. He's the guy he's at Hotjar now, and he's just putting out a lot of stuff. Not specifically SEO, but a lot of interesting growth marketing stuff.
Nice.
And we really like his. He's a French guy living in Ireland. We really like his angle because we've developed a lot of ClickMinded around that too. We've been sort of annoyed with digital marketing media these days, right? Like, there's just too many blog posts and tweets and Facebook posts about how to massively increase your Twitter followers and just like stuff that's like. It's just a little.
It's been done already.
It's been done, and so we really like the more comprehensive tutorials and the in-depth stuff, and that's what we've been doing. And Louis, from Everyone Hates Marketers, is kind of in the same boat, so I really like him.
So he's kind of anti-hype and really trying to look for a more grounded, organic kind of content.
Exactly, yeah.
Nice.
And he's also very much against the webinar starting in 5 minutes and like kind of stuff. He just hates gross marketing, and he calls a lot of it out. So it's kind of cool, which has been great. Brian Dean, kind of a legend in our industry. Yep. I'm buddies with him, and he's been great to follow as well.
Yeah, he's been on the show. He's awesome.
You got a great list. I'm so glad we asked you that question. That was a great list. I can see people right now pushing the rewind button.
Yeah.
And I got to write this down. That was great. That was really fantastic.
That's the first list I've heard that I only knew one person on.
And he did not mention. It's crazy. He did not mention Robert O'Haver either.
Or Search Talk Live.
Or Search Talk Live, right.
Sorry, guys.
He's in Hawaii. It's okay.
Hey, Tommy, what do you say to people who are going, hey, man, organic is dead. The number one ranking keeps falling down further and further and further on the SERP, and there's so much more stuff on the SERP above the number one listing. What do you say to people who say organic's time is done?
Fine. You do that. I'll take your traffic.
Yeah, wait till next year. It'll be the second page organics.
And don't get me wrong, I'm an SEO guy. I've been doing SEO for 10 years, but you're right. It really does depend on your business. I have a couple strong opinions on this. The first is that almost any business is likely to get advantages from diversifying a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So, we've been in SEO play for a long time, but the vast majority of our sales is now happening through our email list, right? So we have become much heavier on email marketing in our business over the last year, right? We've done a lot more media, more webinars, and more stuff on our email list. It's not SEO is not one size fits all for every business. Is kind of the first thing. Like, it really does depend on who your customer avatar is and who you're optimizing for. I think it's very likely that investing in SEO can be massively beneficial to your business, but it doesn't have to be the end all be all, right? The other thing too to think about, and just a lot of people get this wrong. Like, you guys will definitely understand this, but more entry level people this might go over their head. SEO is not just Google on your desktop, right? And this is one of the things that we like to stress is, okay, of course, mobile, everyone gets that now, like mobile penetration, mobile queries, everything's skyrocketing every single year. But SEO is the act of understanding document relevancy for any web application that has a search engine, right? So the easy examples are YouTube, right? Okay, of course you can do YouTube SEO, but you can also do Pinterest SEO. You can also do App Store optimization, right? You can do Yelp SEO. There's any modern web application that has a search function has to rank order documents based on their relevancy. And what that means is you as an entrepreneur or a consultant or an agency have an opportunity to get your documents ranking at the top, right? There's Quora SEO. right? There's TripAdvisor forum SEO, right? There's Airbnb SEO. I mean, and so that's sort of what we like to think about is, okay, yes, Google on your desktop, fine. That's a big channel for a lot of people. But depending on the customer avatar and your business, the act of getting your documents at the top of a search engine is the act of SEO. And it's just much, much wider now. There's plenty of companies out there where their single biggest focus might be Pinterest SEO, right? And that's that's okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah, whatever works for them, right?
I feel like I just missed out on a really big industry buzzword. You said customer avatar twice. Is that interchangeable with persona?
It is. Yeah.
Man, see, avatar, I knew it. I'm buzzword deficient.
Do you want me to send over some buzzwords so we can swap buzzwords?
I've never heard a term that way. That's awesome.
Hey, SEO Scrabble.
Have you heard the term customer avatar before?
Yes.
Did you just say that because I didn't?
Yeah.
Oh, great answer. One of the things we talked about pre-show a little bit, Tommy, was testing, and we've broached this topic in a couple of other shows about testing. People are all into PPC testing. People are all into landing page testing. You don't get a lot of people that really say, you know what, I have a methodical approach to SEO testing. And you kind of do. Can you share with us kind of what's your philosophy about testing from an organic search standpoint?
Yeah, so, I mean, the way we did it at Airbnb might not be as accessible to everyone else, but I have some options for you if you're a little bit smaller. So I basically went into sort of how we did SEO at Airbnb like an idiot when I was first doing it. And it was we really kind of got it wrong initially. And the turning point there from a testing perspective was actually Pinterest. Pinterest engineering team posted on their blog how their A/B testing experiment framework works, and it's fantastic. It's a few years old now, but it's still a really good baseline for how to think about a lot of this stuff. And they were extremely helpful to us as well. Pinterest challenge is fascinating. It's even more difficult than Airbnb, right? Because think about it. The total addressable market for Pinterest SEO traffic is anything that could have an image ever. Right? And so that's huge. And so the way they went about this, and again, it's on their engineering blog, is basically experiment-driven SEO tests. And they came over and helped us out. It was cool, too. I mean, Airbnb and Pinterest are just a couple blocks from each other in San Francisco. The Airbnb recruiters were always poaching Pinterest engineers, and the Pinterest recruiters were always poaching Airbnb engineers, and people were dating each other in each other's offices. So we were friends with them. It was very cool. But yeah, so they've laid this out on how they did it, and we asked for their help, and we created it. And the basic idea is, and this was the other problem within Airbnb. So when I first joined, it was 2013, and Secure Search, I think that year was when Secure Search ramped up to 100%. So there was no longer referred query data. We couldn't kind of get any of that, and it became just a little bit more difficult to figure out the non-brand impact. Right. The easy way that a lot of people would do sort of non-brand attribution within SEO was they would say, okay, any traffic going to the homepage is brand, and any traffic going to deeper pages is non-brand. And let's try and move up non-brand traffic, right? That doesn't work for any type of site that has deeper navigational query traffic, right? So, for example, Yelp San Francisco, right? Or Yelp San Francisco coffee shop, right? For us, that was Airbnb London, Airbnb Paris, and those kinds of queries that are driving you deeper into the page. But the SEO team shouldn't get credit for a query like Airbnb London. That's a branded search, right? So that's sort of how we addressed this was with our experiment framework. The basic idea is we'd have a hypothesis. So, okay, what if we add 4 internal links to this page? Or what if we add a little bit of content to that page? Or what if we remove listings from this page? And we would roll it out to 50% of pages. We would sort of bucket them based on what the data scientist said was a fair bucketing. And we would roll out a change to just 50% of pages across all languages and all variations. But X number of cities would get the treatment and Y number of cities would be the control. And we would just measure the incremental lift in traffic to the treatment, right? And that was it. That was all we did. So all of our SEO was kind of data science and engineering driven experimentation on the actual web application. That's what SEO ended up being at Airbnb. It wasn't content marketing. It wasn't any of this stuff. It was much more boring, kind of under the hood stuff, like running different experiments on certain treatment groups and then measuring whether or not there was a positive impact once it hit statistical significance, and then rolling out everywhere if it worked. And
it's continual. It's ongoing, right?
It's ongoing, yeah. And so we would try for big changes, try for small changes once the positive ones rolled in, and we just kept doing it. And that's sort of how the growth team worked at Airbnb. Everyone would run experiments all the time. And then every Friday we would do experiment review, where we would all sit in a room, usually grab a beer, and talk through the experiments and talk through what worked and what didn't, what the hypothesis was, and share the learnings with the team.
As we look toward the future, how do those tests change when we're facing a future where we're all getting very personalized results? We can no longer bank on the fact that the large portion of the audience all saw the same thing on the SERP. As it gets more personalized, how does that testing change?
Yeah, there's really no good answer here. I don't know. I do not have a good answer for you. I mean, I think some of it gets solved by just sheer quantity. And this is why this particular type of experimentation might not work for everyone, because I've sort of spoken out of both sides of my mouth. The first thing I said was reduce your pages, and the second thing I'm saying is make sure you have 20,000 pages to run experiments. Right? So that doesn't exactly make sense for everyone. So I don't really know. I mean, on one hand, I do love the personalization I get from Google, and on the other hand, it makes my job a hell of a lot harder. And so I don't know what the answer is, but a lot of it was solved just with the sheer quantity. We just have such a comprehensive problem at Airbnb that it was sort of solved by the numbers.
And I'm curious to ask. I've been wanting to ask you this, and I ask a lot of the enterprise level SEOs. Have you ever run a test where you've, like, let's say you built this page and you sent out an email to your 1 million subscribers or whatever, all going to that page for information. Have you ever seen where the amount of activity for a page that brought up the page automatically in the SERPs?
We never ran those experiments at Airbnb, but on our own site at ClickMinded and with friends as well, we have seen this.
Okay.
Curious if you guys have as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Where you email the list, send them all to one page, and it moves up in the SERPs, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And Rand Fishkin actually did this test a couple years ago, or last year, I think it was, where he drove, I think it was like 500,000 people to a page and told them what to search for, what to click on, and then you watched it jump.
Yes, I remember that landmark. Yeah, landmark. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
Really showing the power that at the end of the day, there's a strong democracy element to the ranking factors, right? Sure. If the populace thinks it's good, then it should rank higher. If the populace doesn't think it's good, then it should rank lower. Yeah,
but it doesn't stay. Right. It eventually comes down. But, that's why you see, like, these big, like, local lawyers here, like Dan Newland or something. He drives it on a ton of traffic from TV advertising. So he gets a lot of people hitting that site, and that's why he's killing it on everything.
Right, yeah. Hey, Tommy, on this kind of similar note, let's talk a little bit about your training now. How many people, by the way, would you say you've trained roughly?
Yeah, so ClickMinded, we have more than 10,000 paid users, which has been pretty awesome.
That's why he's in Hawaii.
Okay, that's why he's in Hawaii and we're in Orlando, right? Yeah. As you kind of look back on your training, what do you think is the biggest aha moment you see in general, kind of aggregate? What do you see people go, damn, that I was totally getting that wrong?
Interesting. So, I mean, we have a number of different courses now. We do a lot of different stuff. I think we mentioned the reducing of pages. I think is a good one. It's very counterintuitive for people to say I can get more traffic with fewer pages. The other big one is just we really push over investing in. I can't use the customer avatar because that's too much of a buzzword, right? What do I need to use now? The persona. The persona. I got to go back. Gotta go back in time to the persona. Our customer avatars / personas. We actually recommend sort of over investing in this stuff, and people roll their eyes when we talk about it because everyone hates doing it, and it sucks, right? But this was a pivotal turning point in our business, and we do these really brutal customer avatar interviews where we would get customers and users and get on the phone with them and go through these grueling 45-minute phone calls. What's your name? How old are you? What kind of education do you have? How much money do you make? What do you do on weekends? Are you married? What do you like? Why are you investing in this at work? What do you want to do? And they're like, no, what really do you want to do? Like, are you trying to get a promotion? And just very personal kind of questions. And everyone hates them because they suck. And it feels like you're not working on your business when you're working on them. But when you do them, you get all these aha moments of understanding who your actual avatar is, and then everything flows from there. So it sounds counterintuitive that getting on the phone with your customers and chatting for a while would be an SEO play, but it is. We really dialed in our customer avatars, and then from there, we redid our keyword research, and the total addressable market of our keywords changed a lot based on who we were targeting, and then from there, everything changed again. So our content marketing strategy changed and all that. So I really like these focusing on the pivotal things that everything flows from and sort of over investing in them. And in our case, that was understanding the customer avatars and what their wants and needs are, and then doing the keyword research from there. Because when you get those right, everything ends up being way easier. You know what I mean? And so that was sort of one of the things that a lot of our users benefited from when we focused on that and taught that.
That's a really interesting answer. Robert, let me ask you a question. In your work with clients, if you went to your clients and said, hey, grade yourself 1 to 10 on how well you know your customers, what does the average business owner grade himself as in knowing his customers?
A+.
A+, 12 out of 10, right?
Very rare that they have a good idea.
Yeah, and so that your answer was really interesting because, for businesses that just go to bed at night being totally convinced that they know who their customers are, they could be a flawed keyword research because they're looking at them incorrectly, and if they really do the exercise that you described, you
Right.
just indicated that could be a significant change in keyword strategy. And I have to confession time here. I am one of those people who really struggles in persona development. I mean, I get it. I've read about it. I know it's important. And I personally struggle with it.
Isn't that, Tommy, is it a little difficult to scale something like if you're doing it by calling the client, or are you sending out surveys more?
Yeah, it does not scale at all.
Okay.
And that's what's so brutal about it, and that's why no one does it.
Yeah.
Is because I'll give you an example. Okay, so our customer avatars are entrepreneurs, in-house marketers at Fortune 500 to Inc. 5000 companies,
Right.
and consultants or agencies with 2 to 99 employees, right? And with our agency and consultant avatar, my hypothesis was, okay, the vast majority of agencies and consultants that are signing up are using ClickMinded to grow sales, right? To
Right.
grow their business and to either increase lifetime value of their customers or get more customers, right? And after this series of brutal, grueling, and awful phone interviews, there was this one moment, and this is going to just sound like a dorky, cheesy Hallmark moment, but there's this one moment where, there was a guy, he was running an agency, and he was using ClickMinded to train up staff. And when we got to talking, towards the end of the conversation, the actual sort of nugget finally hit, and he said, yeah, the real reason why I'm using ClickMinded is because I want to train up all my entry-level staff because I want more time with my son at home. And it was just this... I'm not trying to get too dorky with it, but I thought we were trying to increase the guy's sales, and the reality was we were selling time. We were giving him his time back, right?
Right.
And so it sort of changed the persona a little bit around, okay, the actual buyers on that persona, they're not necessarily using the training. They're trying to get their entry-level employees to stop bothering them, right? And he was using ClickMinded to get more time back with his son. So it's just kind of an interesting example. One of the big problems I had, and maybe other SEOs that are listening might have this problem as well, I loved video games as a kid. I loved computer games. I played a lot of them. And I started to treat SEO when I first got into it back in 2008, 2009 as a video game. You know, I really loved watching rankings go up. I really loved watching traffic go up. And I sort of treated it like a dorky online multiplayer game. But the reality is, you know, now that I've been running my business full time for the last 2 years and also had a ton of experience at Airbnb where they're relentless about user experience, is that like it's really easy as an SEO to look at your dashboard like a bunch of numbers, right? Like a bunch of just rankings on a screen. And the reality is you actually get a ton of benefit out of humanizing the data a little bit more and realizing that, like, okay, you're solving the problem of, in this example, of this guy getting more time with his son, right? And so just by like humanizing it a little bit more and realizing that like your customers are actual people with like real problems and like, you know, they have kids and have to go to the grocery store and like, you know, broke up with their boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever. Like they're real people. And so when you do a lot of that, it just makes it a little bit more real. And it ended up letting us like humanize everything a little bit more. And people seem to really appreciate it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Awesome answer.
Well, guess what? It is time for Believe It or Leave It.
Believe it or leave it, one of the most popular parts of Search Talk Live, Tommy. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you 3 statements, and then we found them on the internet, by the way, so you know they got to be true. So we're going to ask you to tell our audience whether they should believe it or whether they should leave it, and then tell us why. You ready?
This first one's a doozy.
I'm ready.
Ready. Number 1, a canonical link is the same as a 301 redirect.
Leave it.
Tell us why.
Canonicals are definitely not as strong as 301s. I have experience on large sites and small sites. That just does not seem to be the case. I do not trust canonical tags.
Wow, I did not hear a hint of doubt in his voice. He has a lot of conviction on that one.
All right. Number 2, you should renew your domain for the longest duration possible to achieve a ranking benefit.
Don't
I
believe
didn't
that.
finish it. He was on it.
Are we feeding them the easy ones?
Yeah. All right, the next
there
one,
are still quite a few people who believe that, though.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And still quite a few people who, because I took that right off of somebody's article that wasn't, you know,
Really?
and it wasn't like dated, 1997 either. Yeah. Interesting, huh?
Ouch. But that's why we have this show, right?
Yes, exactly. All right. Believe it or leave it. Number 3, the idea that content has to be a specific length to rank is a myth.
Interesting. I do not believe that there's like a magic number like 872 and then you magically rank, right? But I do think in general when you have longer content, you give Google more opportunities to find the LSI keywords and find the thematically related things and things like that. So yeah, there's always going to be trends and there's going to be like statistical analyses of SERPs that say, okay, the ones with the most content in general are ranking, but it's not going to be solely because there's a magic number, there's a magic word count you have to hit. You know what I mean? So
It's too bad.
So in general, leave it.
All right. Great job.
All right.
Last up, before we close out the show, the Search Talk Live Tattoo. Tommy, you've been great. A lot of awesome stuff. Your influences were fantastic. And we got a lot of people taking notes, listening to the show. Close it off for us with your Search Talk Live Tattoo, your shortest, most concise, most helpful piece of advice you can leave our listeners with. And as you can imagine, we got a very, very large ink budget here at Search Talk Live because Robert gets all of these as tattoos on that. So give us something that Robert can tattoo and that will make an impact on our audience.
Interesting. I think I would go back to what I mentioned before around the interview. So my tattoo would be humanize your data.
Nice.
Deep.
I like that.
That's deep, man. That really is. And I love the story you put behind it, too, on that. And I'm inspired myself to try to get better at persona/avatar development just because of your story. But I like it. Humanize your audience.
Oh, I thought you meant spending time with your son. All right, guys. Well, I want to thank you, Tommy, for being on the show. It's been great. Lots of good nuggets for people to write down and keep in mind. If people want to reach out to you, how can they do that?
Yeah, we're at clickminded.com. On Twitter, I'm at Tommy Griffith. And we just launched these old school 8-bit digital marketing and SEO strategy guides. So if you ever played like Nintendo or Super Nintendo in the 90s, we created these strategy guides that are like 8-bit style. So you can check them out. They're free at clickminded.com.
That's cool. That reminds me, do you remember, it was like probably 5 years ago, somebody came out with an SEO video game and you had Matt Cutts as the character and
I don't remember that.
Rand Fishkin and all those other guys were characters in the game.
No, I don't remember that.
Sorry, that's old.
That's awesome. I've never heard of that.
It's
So
out there.
sweet.
I think it was Barry Schwartz that actually put that together, but it exists. It's
All right,
out there.
so if you're listening to the show and you know where that is, send us a link. We'd love to have it.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, thanks again, everyone, for listening to the show. Tommy, I really appreciate you coming on the show. It's been great. We will send out the link to everyone so you can, if you missed it, you can come back and listen to it. And we'll be back next week. Thanks.
And we got to say, for Tommy's benefit, we got to say, aloha, everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me on the show, guys. Really appreciate it.
Bye-bye,
right.
everyone.
Thanks, man. Bye.
Search Talk Live is sponsored by the Robert Palmer family of companies. If you have questions for Search Talk Live, or you're interested in being a guest or a sponsor of the show, email Robert at searchtalklive.com. That's searchtalklive.com.